All right, Puma. Let's move on to our continuing series here of previewing divisions. Now, this week we're doing the AFC West, so we'll start off with the Kansas City Chiefs. What is your Kansas City Chiefs 3-point plan for the offseason?
I mean, for me, it's really going to be, Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. Like they're going to have to step up in this offense with the departures of Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster. I never thought I would say Juju was a key loss in the offensive side of the football, but down the stretch of the playoffs and the Super Bowl for sure. Tony's got the talent. It's just whether or not like the headspace is there and whether or not he can stay healthy. And Sky Moore, I'm high on for this kid. He's going to be a second year wide receiver. He was drafted last season, but I have high hopes for him in this offense. I definitely think he can fit that role of what Mecole Hardman and what they think he could be in a potential like Tyreek Hill light type of scenario. So I look forward to those two taking a big step forward. And fantasy football wise, like I'm probably going to be a little bit more invested in Sky Moore than what I was last year. The other one, it's going to be a common theme amongst every team is the offensive line. They let Orlando Brown walk and Andrew Wiley walk. Wiley went to the Commanders. And Orlando Brown went to, I guess you could say now, AFC rival in the Cincinnati Bengals. They've banged, pretty interestingly in games the last couple of years. So, they let those guys walk. They add Jawan Taylor from the Jacksonville Jaguars. The left tackle position is not really something that's natural for Taylor. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. And no Bieniemy, no problem. I mean, Matt Nagy's now going to be the offensive coordinator. He was the OC there prior with Andy Reid. I mean, we all know Andy Reid is calling the plays, but, over the last couple of seasons, there have been reports that Mahomes and Bieniemy weren't on the same page, and sometimes it was visible on the sideline. And even Travis Kelce had something to say a few times on the sideline to EB. So I want to see how this offense looks with Matt Nagy. I don't think it's going to take a giant step back. I think it might take a step forward, if anything, now that there's a different voice in the offensive side of the football.
Yeah. And for me, it's somewhat aligns with your 3-point plan as well. It's basically replace Orlando Brown. You got to address the defensive line, and you've got to find a wide receiver one, right? So number one, replacing Orlando Brown. You can probably, the best way of doing this is a draft, right? You find that guy at left tackle that you can bring in, that you can mold, that you can have protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side for the next 10, 15 years, essentially grow with him, right? A couple of guys that come to mind, DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, freak athlete. If he's there anywhere near that spot, jump up and take him. If he's gone, maybe take Anton Harris from OU, from Oklahoma, kid right down the road. He's also a beast. Addressing the defensive line. I don't think Jalen Carter is going to slide that much because now his agent said he's only going to take meetings with top 10 teams. But if he somehow gets down to the 20s and you essentially move up and take him, that would be mint because they've got to address that defensive line. I mean, it's been, they've had people coming in and out of that defensive line. They've got to essentially shore that up. And with the talent in the AFC West, with the offenses in the AFC West, you're going to have, edge rushers and a defensive line that can get to opposing quarterbacks. And then finally, finding a wide receiver one. Juju obviously is a wide receiver two. And they were lucky last year that they went and won the Super Bowl with just Travis Kelce, but I don't think that's something that you can rely on, right? You can't just go into year in and year out and just having Patrick Mahomes with a wide receiver two and a tight end one and win the Super Bowl. So whether it's OBJ or Hopkins, or if they feel that Kadarius Toney can take the next step to becoming wide receiver one, they've got to somehow figure that out as well. Now the one question I have for you, Puma, is, you mentioned this, and this is something I wanted to kind of expand on a little bit. With Eric Bieniemy leaving, right? I know at the end of the day, we all think Patrick Mahomes is going to plug and play, and essentially it's the Tom Brady of the 20 years of New England dynasty where it doesn't matter if it's Bill O'Brien, Josh McDaniels. But this really is the first time we're seeing a shift in offensive philosophy and a shift in offensive coordinator for Patrick Mahomes. So do you see any sort of like taking a step back, kind of like how Josh Allen did this year without Brian Daboll, or do you think it's going to be smooth, seamless transition next year, picking right up where they left off?
Honestly, I think it's going to be smooth. I think it's just going to be picking up right where they left off, just because, no disrespect to EB, Andy Reid was calling those plays. You know what I mean? Yep. Like he would essentially like relay it to EB, and EB would key it up on the microphone, and he'd hear it in the helmet. Like there was never any report of EB was just strictly doing all of the offensive play calling, and Andy Reid was just standing there. Like I think the same is going to happen with Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy's just going to be singing from the same sheet music per se. So I don't anticipate this being like a Daboll to Ken Dorsey situation. I think it's just going to be right where they left off.
Okay. Okay.